Hey everybody, Dave Hagan here. Are you catching fire? That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Welcome everybody to the podcast. We're here in Van Nuys, California at Uncle Studios. Looking forward to another interesting session here. So I've got with me Brian Reed today. Brian, hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How you doing, Dave?
All right. We got a really interesting thing to talk about today, I think. Last podcast, we were talking about a guy that had $250,000 in savings in the bank, and he was age 28. You didn't listen? Well, go back to episode 140 and listen, and then come back and join us. But I want you to listen to that podcast first, episode 140. Now, we like some of his ideas like thoughtful spending, reducing spending, some of the things that he proposed, being thoughtful about his spending patterns, like it. But we also chided him about some things too, like charging his girlfriend rent. Remember that, Brian?
I remember that.
Yeah, we were kind of, giving him a hard time. The point was that he was extreme in terms of what he was doing. He wanted to not work by the time he was, 30, 35 or something like that. But there were some things that we could learn from him, and we did, I think, last time. But this week, we want to take this to the next level. There's a whole group of people out there that are doing this, and it's called the FIRE movement. So I want to spend some time thinking or talking about the FIRE movement. Now, what is the FIRE movement? Well, FIRE stands for Financial Independence Retire Early, F-I-R-E. There's no pyrotechnics involved in this. It's just people that want to be financially independent or retire early. It's a movement whose goal is financial independence, not following the traditional concept that we have as a society that you work till you're 65 or 70. There's even a more concrete definition to it for those of you that like to do the math. It's when your net worth is 25 times your annual expense. At that point, you can consider yourself financially independent. So if your annual expenses are $40,000, you're financially independent when your total net worth is $1 million. Well, that's a whole lot less than a lot of people that I've financial advisors and what have you that I've heard out there. But that's an interesting formula. When your financial or when your net worth is 25% or 25 times your annual expense, you're considered financially independent. Now, the FIRE movement's not a formal group. It doesn't look like there's any kind of 501c3 that's running it. There's no shows or anything that are specifically dealing with it. Right now, it's just a series of blogs and podcasts, but it's being more and more discussed in the mainstream media. In fact, recently I understand that the FIRE movement was taken on by Suze Orman, who's one of the real big financial advisors. You see her on TV all the time. She's got books and records, CDs, all that stuff. So it's being more and more discussed. It's starting to seep into our collective consciousness as a country. There's a book out there that's coming out early next year called Playing with Fire. It's on Amazon. Check it out. There's also going to be a documentary by the same title, again, coming out in 2019. Check it out. Should be interesting. Now, I've said this same kind of thing, if I could pat myself on the back a little bit, one way or the other for years. I've said that when the income on your investments is sufficient to cover your expenses, you can retire. Of course, that involves three variables, doesn't it? The amount of your expenses, the amount of interest that you can reasonably expect, and the annual or monthly living expenses that you have. I think FIRE is a little more extreme than that, though. It's a way to alter your thinking about your lifestyle and dramatically reduce expenses to get to that retirement or to get to that financial independence sooner. I don't know about you, Brian, but I dig it, but I don't want to get too carried away with it.
It sounds pretty intense. It's something that's, it's a definite lifestyle. It's not just a passive thought that you kind of keep in your head and maybe every now and again check your 401k to see what it's doing. This is, how much can I save? How low can I go? What do I, what is it? All right, what do I really need to eat?
Right. How low can you go? I remember a guy, he wanted to be a ski bum, and, he didn't get a lot of money, putting people on the lift. And his idea was, okay, I can do that, and I can spend my off day skiing if I eat macaroni and cheese so many days a week. And like 3-4 days a week, he'd get out a 25-cent box of macaroni and cheese and make dinner. That's a little extreme, but hey, it worked for him.
It's possible. When you set a goal, and if you are that determined, you don't care about eating mac and cheese. You're living for the next day when you're skiing.
As long as it's the good mac and cheese in that little blue box with the yellow lettering and what have you. I don't know. I dig it, but I think people can get carried away too. I had a professor in college, Edward Sang, and he said, moderation in all things. And when you're young, I don't know that you truly appreciate that, but you kind of carry it with you. And there are times when it kind of pops out in your brain that, you need to moderate a lot of the things that you're doing because you can get a little too carried away. I've told people for years, hey, you could retire right when you get out of undergrad. I mean, if you're comfortable living in your parents' basement and that's your thing and you have no overhead, okay, you can collect bottle caps and cans for food and you're good to go. Of course, the problem is you're living in your parents' basement.
You're living in your parents' basement.
Not really working, But I think there's a lot of things that we can take away from the FIRE movement, things that the listeners can incorporate into their life. I mean, the FIRE movement folks are talking about, hey, a life path or a lifestyle. What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? How do you want to live? It's causing people to think about what's really important to them. Is a particular kind of car important, or is free time important, or is eating in a certain style or having so much time with your friends important? It's really making people think about that. It's making people think about and consider really what it would take to make them independent. I think in the United States, it was typically, hey, work till you're 65 till you're too tired to show up to work, and then you get Social Security. And that was kind of the mode. And if you didn't get Social Security, or if Social Security wasn't enough, you get like a pension from the company. Well, not anymore.
Not anymore.
The pension from the private company is probably not happening. Maybe from the city or state government, if you work for a government, maybe, but certainly not from the private company. And Social Security, I don't have any confidence that it's going to be there with what I see going on in the media. So it makes people consider potentially including non-traditional things in their life. I kind of like it. What do you think, Brian?
It's like you said, motivation and moderation. Maybe I'm going to work on that. There's something about those two words put together, motivation with moderation.
The big M. There's a song or something.
There's a song.
Going on
There's something there in terms of long-term financial planning. But if you are motivated, I mean, maybe this is what's interesting is they're doing it at the right time. What if a kid does this for 5 years and then puts that into all that money saved,
right,
goes into a retirement account at the age of 25, and he leaves that alone, or she leaves that alone until they're 65. 5 years of living on mac and cheese. You're going to save up a lot of money if you have a job and it's just you're not spending anything. Think about it, because there's your retirement. You did everything for your retirement in 5 years.
Right. No, I mean, very, very doable. When you're young, you don't care so much about what you got. Yeah, I mean, you're just like, hey, as long as I can go out and work out, hang out with my friends, make some money, Yeah, no, that's an interesting thought. And if somebody is, let's say they get out of school at, 20, and they do this till they're 25, and they're going to work till they're 55, that's 50 years. And at 7%, their money will double 5 times. So 5,000 becomes 10, 20, 40, 80, $160,000 by the time they retire, if that's what they want to do. And it's based upon something they did back when they were 21 to 25. That's crazy.
Think back, you're 21 to 25. It's 4 years.
No.
It's such a small number.
No, I know. I've thought about that with calories, actually. I've thought, well, what if I never had any donuts? I'd probably be 20 pounds, 30 pounds lighter. Of course, I guess I would never have the experience of a nice little French cruller with a cup of coffee in the morning. But I've often thought about that. What if I had just given that up or, hadn't done the Big Mac in my lifetime? You might look a lot different. But it's something interesting to talk about. And I think your point is real key. It's got to happen early.
Yeah.
Got to happen early. I want to talk for a few minutes about a guy named Mr. Money Mustache. Now, I don't know. Have you ever heard of that blog?
Money Mustache?
The guy's named Mr. Money Mustache. And it's a blog, actually. It's not a guy. It's not his real name. But he's the author of this upcoming book, or co-author of this book, Playing with Fire. And he's got this blog where he talks about all these things dealing with the FIRE movement. So he attempts to cover some of the common misconceptions in a recent article he did. And I thought it'd be interesting that we talk about a few because he's a super big proponent. And there's a lot of people looking for like holes in the story, holes in the program, that kind of stuff. And he wanted to, kind of debunk some of those. So I thought it would be interesting to see what Mr. Money Mustache talks about. The first thing is he says, hey, it's all winning and there's no downsides. He says there's no downsides because the whole reason you're doing any of this is to lead to the happiest, most satisfying life you can possibly lead. I don't know, but are there downsides, Brian? What do you think? If someone's 30 and they tell me they're retired, usually that seems to me it's code for like they're getting out, they just got out of rehab or something.
If they're putting together a lifestyle that's not going to be, extravagant.
Right.
Then maybe with a persona of, guys, let's just keep it simple and be happy.
Yeah.
Live moderately, spend time, I don't know. That's just a lot of time. I'm looking at that going, if you're going to try and retire by even, let's just say 40. All right, you're going to do what for the next 40 years? Now you can't travel that much.
Right.
Because you need to live frugally. So can't travel that much. So you're going to do a lot of reading and learn languages and learn instruments.
Yep. But hey, if your thing is to, live in the basement of your parents' house and play Xbox, you could be a very happy person. I think a lot of people, need a little more stimulation than that, or want to achieve or do or experience a little more than that. But, that's possible. I don't see that, Mustache says there's no downside. I don't know. I think there is. I think you're going to do without a lot of things that you might want to otherwise do. You're not going to travel as much as you might otherwise not want to travel. Again, I'm looking at this from the moderation in all things perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of wisdom to be taken from this, and a lot of things that could be incorporated into someone's, lifetime financial plan. But too much of it seems, I don't know, a little extreme.
Yeah.
You tell your friends, they go, hey, we're going out drinking when you're younger, we're going out, blah, 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 blah. And you go, well, I'll have a water. It just doesn't, it doesn't all fit together the same,
Yeah. Not that there's anything wrong with going out and, just having a water. It's about, are you still doing those things? And are you going to lose? Are you going to, not maintain some friendships because friendships are effortful. You have to go and do things with people. And if some people are against spending money or going out, then we're looking at, no, you guys go and I'll see you when we all hang out at the park. And that's it.
Right.
You never want to do anything. Will other people look at them differently and go, oh boy, it's him again, or it's her again.
Yeah, Debbie Downer or something like that. Number two, he says it doesn't matter how much money you make, and he makes an example of, talking to people about, giving up a $10 glass of wine, and he says for someone making a lot of money, a $10 glass of wine represents 3 minutes in their business life, where as someone who's making a lot less, giving up a glass of wine is much more significant, and the savings are more significant. So his thesis is, it really doesn't matter how much money you make. And I was thinking about this, and I was thinking back to our old apartment when my wife and I first got married. It had like shag green carpet, and we found some floor mats and like hung them on the wall for decoration. And we had a kitchenette and a dinette in the kitchenette that had like naugahyde in a paisley
Nice.
print. Yeah, but you know what? We were happy. We were just fine. We'd have people come over. We would watch skiing movies and do stuff like that. We're pretty happy, you know. We even had this really cruddy old TV with the big tube in the back, and I had to kind of, tuck a card behind the tuner so that it wouldn't all snow out. But, we had a good time. We're happy. Now we've got more stuff, and are we that much more happy? We're pretty happy, but I don't know if we're that much more happy, The next thing he says is fire's not really about early retirement. I think we talked about that a little bit already, Brian, but it's not about retirement per se, or at least about our traditional concept of retirement where, for our parents at least, it used to be, hey, just sit around and wait to die. You're through working and you just sit around. I think that the concept of retirement's evolving, and Mustache is saying it's not about retirement so much. I mean, retirement sounds glitzy and glamorous and all that kind of stuff, but it's more about financial independence. And that's what I find kind of attractive. He says, does this mean you'll quit commuting through traffic to, show up at a job where you're promoting products that you really don't care about? Yeah, probably. But does it mean that you'll still work at things that are important to you for the rest of your life? Well, no, I think that, somebody who's a thinking person will still want to do those kinds of things. Now, maybe it'll mean, I don't know, part-time job at a library teaching kids to read, or it'll be, working at developing products, or maybe it'll be some kind of part-time job at the beach where you get to be at the beach, or something like that. But I don't think it means, the traditional sense of retirement, sitting home and waiting to have dinner at 4:00. What do you think?
No, I think I agree with what you're saying. It's financial independence. You substitute those words for the word retirement.
Right.
That's what these fire people are going for.
Right.
So they'll still work. They'll just, it's got to be what it is. They'll still do things.
Right.
It just won't be because they financially have to.
Right. Right. I mean, what a bummer. You got to get them go to work because you got to pay your overhead. That's a bummer.
That's the day in, day out of real life for most people. So they're trying to avoid that and say, what if this isn't the norm, or what if it doesn't have to be the norm?
Right.
Why are we all buying in on this, that you do this throughout the entire life and then at 65 you retire?
Right. I saw a really cool quote from one of the fire people. She said, I buy freedom with frugality. Ooh, I like that. Because normally we think frugality is kind of a negative thing, and yet here it's somebody buying freedom with that, and that's kind of cool. Or another guy, a part of the fire movement, said, hey, if I save 50% of my income, my retirement goes from 50 years from now to 17 years from now. Well, that's kind of cool too. Now, saving 50% is a little extreme, but it's not like, sitting in an unfurnished apartment in your underpants, drinking, water coming out of the tap, I mean, if you're only saving 50%, you still have a pretty nice lifestyle. It seems to me that I've seen people when they go through life and they make more money, their lifestyle rapidly meets their income, or in a lot of times slightly exceeds their income. And if people can have their lifestyle increase at a lesser rate than their income, well, now they got that gap. Now they've got something that they can do. And if someone can actually follow some of the tips in the fire movement to use that to reduce their lifestyle, wow, they're getting to their goals just that much quicker. Another thing he says, that to be a believer or a follower of the fire movement, you don't have to necessarily depend on a booming stock market. We've been kind of spoiled the last several years where the market's been good and returning pretty well, but what goes up will go down ultimately. And so people criticize the fire movement saying, well, yeah, great. In a bad market, what are you going to do? But his response is that, the income that he's talking about, income off of investments, is based upon averages, longer periods of time. And of course, the years that the investments return a much higher percentage, that has to be squirreled away for the years that it doesn't. So, he's talking about long-term averages. And he also makes the point that if you have lower overhead, it means that your reliance upon market rate is less, which is kind of interesting. I would think that people should think about the income on their investments not being enough to cover their expenses, but to cover plus some of their expenses. So if there's a little fall off in the interest rate, you don't have to worry about that. Now, the other thing that he says, and here's where he really kind of takes on Suze Orman. He says, well, she really deals in fear. She said you have to have this incredible amount of money to protect you just in case. And his response is, well, low overhead and the need for less money will kind of get you through that, and that'll cure your fear. You won't have to worry about it so much. And, if you spend a lot of your time worrying about your financial status, maybe you need to work on kind of a mental or perspective issue as opposed to like return on investment. So he's got these interesting tips, and I love these tips. I just absolutely love these tips. He says, start each day with a 1 mile brisk walk. It gets all your hormones in balance and reduces stress and fear in your life. I kind of like that.
Okay.
He says, read books about managing stress and learn about meditation using apps like Headspace or Camp Calm. We're going to do a whole episode on this later.
Okay.
In fact, I use Headspace, love it, recommend it. My wife uses another app that she uses, but it helps you keep perspective and calm. Really like that. The third thing he says, completely avoid the daily news cycle, especially TV or radio. It's gotten to the point that you can't even turn on the news or whatever.
Too depressing.
It's too depressing and gets you all worked up about stuff.
Why is everyone so angry?
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. And then he says, seek out and hang out with more optimistic friends. Remove negativity and gossipy friends from your daily life. And I think there's something to that too. I think that can reduce some of the fear and stress in your life, and let you focus on the things that are important, like your life financial plan, like your relationships, like your health, that kind of stuff. Another thing he says is, place your bets where the odds are in your favor. And he talks as an example about people who don't ride bikes and cycle because they go, it's too risky, you can get hurt and mess yourself up. And the response to that is, yeah, but it puts your body in better shape, so you have less risk of cardiovascular catastrophe. So what are your better odds? Maybe you pick your odds and you be smart about that. So these are some of the things that he's talking about in terms of this alternate lifestyle. And again, it seems a little extreme to me, but I think there's a lot that we can take out of that and put into our own financial lives. What do you think, Brian?
I think it's going to work its way into society over time, like it is right now. But some of these ideas, I think, will stick, man. If that inspires people or the younger generations to start saving now, amen. All for it.
Yeah. But it's got to have some, perspective. I just have this view of this ski bum buddy of mine, trying to set up a date, and he tells the gal, well, why don't you come on over? We're having mac and cheese.
My mom is making it.
Yeah, we're having it in the basement. Not really the kind of thing that's going to
inspire long-term relationship commitment.
Yeah, really. Oh my goodness. So what's the takeaway from this today? Well, maybe the FIRE movement's a little extreme, but there's a lot of good things that can be learned and incorporated into someone's plan. And don't think about it in terms of retirement. Think about it in terms of financial independence. And also, this is a thought process that's starting to hit the mainstream media. The fact that we're even talking about it when there's no formal structure means that there's something to it, and people are starting to get interested in it.
Something is happening, and it's being talked about.
Yeah,
that's a good thing.
I think we'll see more of this as in the times to come. All right, that's all we've got time for today. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.